All right, Graham, we're live reaction to the Florida Gator beatdown of the Florida State Seminoles. I think the final score was 31-11. The game ended like 15 minutes after it should have. I mean, you have Mike Norvell calling timeouts before the 2-minute warning, so his offense can get back on the field. So hopefully, they weren't going to be able to cover the spread because that's what everybody was watching for at the end of the game.
Right.
And I was so shocked after that second timeout, right before the 2-minute timeout, that Napier threw the ball. I did not know he had any meat bones in his body. I thought he was going to run it, go status quo, and then just kick a field goal and move on with it. Graham, I know.
It felt good, man. It felt like look, I'm all for sportsmanship. I'm all for doing what you need to do, and I get that. And there is a point where there's a line that you cross and whatnot, but that wasn't the line. And for Napier to say no, we came here to kick your ass, and we're gonna do it, and we're gonna slam the door shut on you, and we're not gonna apologize. That felt good, man. And to your point, I didn't know if Napier had that bone in his body. But for him to show a little Urban Meyer, show a little Steve Spurrier, you and I know as well as everybody in the comments that that's what Gator fans want. And when Florida coaches can show a little bit of that, that's the one that I can't speak. Sorry, that's the ones that tend to have the most success. It's cold out here. My mouth is.
Yeah. All right, Graham. Everybody's popping in the comments, so I guess we'll bring this up. Right after the game, just like you've seen in every rivalry game today, kind of started off with Ohio State, Michigan.
It's been Flag Day today.
Yes, it's been very Flag Day. Florida, I forget what player it was. Somebody could tell me in the comments, and I'll put it up on here. It might have been Gums, 34.
George Gums.
Yeah.
Beast, by the way.
Yeah, played like a monster today. Got the black flag. I think it was the black Jordan logo flag. And as soon as the game was over, I mean, before even the two coaches even met at midfield, he got the flag. He just went boom, and he just landed it. And Norvell was pissed, and he was basically like, "What WTF?" And he didn't even shake Napier's hand. And then Napier got in the middle, and I mean, Florida's got more coaches than players, and they got to it pretty quick. I really don't care. Me and you kind of talked about this when we were texting before, right after the Ohio State Michigan game. I mean, if you don't want to see the flag planted on your field, don't let the other team win. It's that simple. Now, does the other team have the option to retaliate? Yes, they should. But I mean, it's kind of getting out of hand, man. This is just kind of the epitome of what social media is and attention. And I mean, I know Baker Mayfield did that years ago when they beat Ohio State. And again, it was like, week 2? But I mean, when you beat a rival for the first time in a long time, and I know Florida beat them in 21, it feels good. But man, it feels like this is a, how do I want to put this? It just feels like a problem that's going to be addressed.
Yeah, they're going to put some rule in about it at some point. You'd have to imagine it's kind of becoming a topic of conversation, like the storm the field thing. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody thinks it's good or bad or whatever. With the plant of the flag, it's just resulting in too many fights. To your point, and the sport's not going to want that. So the networks are not going to want that. More importantly, the ones paying all this money for these broadcasts, and because it's causing issues for them, man. They can't get the sideline interviews there, or the on-field interviews after the game they want to get.
They didn't even show the sideline interview after the game.
And you can't, dude. I mean, we all saw. I'm pretty sure everybody saw Michigan, Ohio State. To your point earlier today, they're in the middle of interviewing. It wasn't Sharon Moore. He handed it off to Mason Graham, their D tackle. But Fox couldn't even finish the interview because there's a huge scuffle on the field, and they had to just cut it. And the networks are not going to like that. I'll tell you right now. They're not going to like, A, not being able to get their sideline interview in, and B, having to extend coverage because they're having to cover this fight instead of getting on to the next game. So, yeah. But that's all we got to talk about. We can talk about the football game at this point.
They didn't even show. They didn't do an interview. They went straight to the FCS championship game between Montana State and whoever else. And I wanted to hear what Napier said. Usually he'd say something that we could mention, but didn't happen. I thought the way that it was going in the first half, that I felt like this was going to be a game where Florida wins by 20 and no fans were going to be happy just because of we all expected them to win by 20, 24, and we all want them to win a blowout fashion. one, Florida State gave us every opportunity to get back in the game. I mean, they're at the 6-yard line at 17-3, if I'm not mistaken, and they fumble a toss sweep, just like when they played LSU a couple years ago in that season opener in the Superdome.
And don't forget, Dylan, don't forget early in the game, they were moving the ball pretty well, had a nice run for a first down, and Shamar James stripped the ball.
And also, Florida goes 3 and out punts, and Florida State muffs a punt.
Yeah.
Florida gets the ball. Yep. So that's a field goal. So that's a 10-point swing right there. It felt like Florida State gave Florida multiple opportunities. Napier, it felt like he kind of took it easy on Florida State, like he knew that they were going to beat them regardless. And then you put on top of that, Florida, all the players know that FSU is not the better team. Not saying that's an excuse, but when you know that going into a game, you're usually not as focused. And I felt like you could kind of tell, like we're going to beat this team by 20. It doesn't really matter. Florida could very easily win this game by 40. That was kind of my assessment, as you know, before we dig in all these details for the game.
Yeah, Christian from YouTube put this in the comments when we first got rolling here. Said this wasn't at all impressive. This wasn't all that impressive of a performance. Y'all need to tell the truth about what you saw out there tonight. The team didn't have that same fire in them like last 2 weeks. And a lot of people are kind of saying sort of similar stuff. I agree in pockets of the game. I definitely agree. I think early in the game, Lagway was a little shaky. Never really got cooking like you would hope he would. Was a little bit inaccurate at certain times. You could tell, especially early in the game, there were some pregame jitters there. And then he made a couple plays where it's like there's only a few human beings on the planet that can make plays like that. I mean, that play where he spun out of the sack and then delivered the dime. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
Against their best defensive lineman.
And then the other play he made on the run out to the right as well, that throw that he threw on the run to DK over the defender's head toward the sideline. It was wobbly, but I mean, you couldn't place it better in terms of where the ball needed to drop in. And then, of course, you could probably tell early in the game when he threw the interception that Marcus Burke clearly ran the wrong route. Whatever they were signaling, you could tell that Marcus Burke at some point was supposed to break off his route and not go deep, and they were going to try to drop it in the bucket with a slot fade to Chim DK. And who knows? It probably would have been incomplete. He wasn't that open, but it probably would have been picked off. But to Christian's point, and Dylan, you probably agree with me, a little bit clunky at times on offense, didn't quite step on their throats at certain times where you thought they could have really had some drives. They went down, punched it in, and really made them quit a little bit earlier than you probably would have hoped. And that was a little disappointing. I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm just saying it as this is just the reality. On rivalry weekend, typically when one team is a huge underdog and the other team is a clear favorite, the team that's the big underdog gets to play totally free, and the team that's the favorite, they play a little tight. And you could tell Florida was a little tight at times in this game, and it's up to the head coach to get them not playing that way. And I think especially the most frustrated I was during the course of the game, Dylan, was Florida scores right before halftime, and you're feeling good. You're like, okay, Florida can dominate the middle eight here because they get the ball to start the second half, and Florida can really start to pull away and make this kind of the game we're all hoping to see. And that first drive out of halftime was just disgusting to watch. It was bad. Just again, you and I were at the Ole Miss game last week. Three straight plays and just clunker with nothing there. And I tweeted and it popped off a little bit. I think a lot of people agreed with it. Right after that, I tweeted Billy Napier and the offense to come out with nothing pretty consistently to start each half is a prime example of why he needs an offensive coordinator, in my opinion. Because when you're the head coach, Dylan, at halftime, especially in a rivalry game, you got to worry about so many things. You got to worry about kind of calming your team down, typically a little bit emotionally, getting them to Cedric, because I really hope Napier hires him. So, yeah, exactly. Because at halftime, especially with a rivalry game, you got to talk to the whole team, right? You got to worry about their morale. You got to worry about calming them down a little bit emotionally and making sure they don't do anything dumb. And when you're worried about that stuff, it's really hard to make sure you can really dial up good stuff coming right out of halftime. And that's a big reason, I think, in my opinion, that a lot of times they come right out of halftime and they look really flat. and they don't have a whole lot. The plays look really predictable right away. It's a lot of pistols. It's a lot of pistol formation, which I hate. They run too much pistol, in my opinion. I know you agree with that, Dylan. And I just wish overall that you could have somebody in that halftime locker room that I know their entire focus is what can we cook up right out of halftime to really get down the field. And they don't have that. And it's part of the bigger conversation. It's why I don't think they have that killer instinct that puts teams away like they really should and really embarrass a team like Florida State, who is terrible, and make that game completely over by the start of the fourth quarter. So that's my biggest thing I wish they would change heading into 2025. And I don't think they're going to, but if they continue to recruit and get the players, then maybe you live with it. I don't know. That's my one big gripe coming out of the game. I don't want to be totally negative, but that was just the one criticism I would come out with.
So the Ole Miss game, I think they had 4 yards in the third quarter of offense. I see one comment about it. This is what they did today, coming in the third quarter. First drive, coming out of the half, -8 yards, 3 and out. Next drive, after the Florida State field goal, 4 plays, 20 yards. So you get 12. And then the first play, sorry, was that the muff punt? I think it was the muff punt. Way Crawshaw. Yeah, because then Florida got the field goal, got no yards on that drive on the field goal, and then they got 1 play at the end of the half. So they ended up having 20 yards in the third quarter, where it felt like, okay, Florida's in the game, or Florida State's in the game rather, and okay, Florida's got to bury him now. It's third quarter. I'm not gonna be the one to gripe because we saw what Georgia was yesterday. We saw Michigan as a 20-point underdog, and we all know how these rivalries go.
100%. 100%.
But I don't see Napier going to change what he's doing. We saw this last month how well it worked, and yes, you can critique things here and there, but I don't think he's going to change anything. Not with the staff. He still hasn't hired a defensive coordinator who said he was calling plays on that side of the ball. I don't think that's going to change. He's still going to call plays on the offense. He's got a lot of momentum in recruiting, and they won this game 31-11, and they'll play in a bowl game of a Gasparilla Bowl or Gator Bowl playing UCF or who knows who it'll be. But all in all, Florida State, they had a late turnover, but they ended up with 5 turnovers. Florida had 14 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. Had I told you all those things, you would be very content. But it just felt like the beginning of this game, man. They were trying to throw the ball a lot. Receivers weren't on the same page. A lot of drops. There was
a lot of dudes. I know Florida's got injuries, but a lot of guys on offense that were getting a lot of snaps that I haven't seen play much at all. That was a little weird. Like Marcus Burt played a ton. And I know he caught a touchdown, and that's great, and he's a local kid here in Jacksonville, which is great. But did Elijah Badger have a catch? I think he had a couple catches. But Elijah Badger wasn't a huge factor like he's been the last couple of weeks. Part of that might have been some game plan. But Tony Livingston playing a bunch of snaps, just a little weird in terms of who was playing. Again, I know Florida's got injuries. I get that, but a lot of the main difference makers the last couple of weeks weren't seemingly the guys that were getting the ball a lot early in the game, which is a little weird to me.
Well, and the defensively, dude, Kromenhoek looked like a freaking Jordan Travis a little bit. The amount of times he was able to scramble, and I'm like, geez, we're going to have one of those games where he's going to scramble all game, and we're going to have a game in the fourth quarter. Luckily, it didn't come to that point, and Cam Jackson gets hurt, whatever it was, first, second play of the game, you're like, geez.
Yeah, really early. It felt like when Aaron got hurt last week, it was like, come on, man.
Then Banks gets hurt, and you're like, dude, this is not a recipe that we need. Banks never came back in. Jackson came back in, and Florida was able to do their thing. Pyburn had a good game, like we mentioned at the top of the show. Gums, I call him Gumby. I want to know how many sacks he had total. He went off. Let me see here.
Jameer Grimsley sighting in this game. Haven't seen much of Jameer Grimsley at all year.
Yeah, 34. He only had 1 sack. Cam Jackson had 2 sacks. Jaden Robinson, number 29, had 2 sacks. Pyburn had that strip sack. So, all in all, we all knew that Florida was expected to win this game, and they ended up winning it. We all said at the beginning of the season, if Florida goes 7-5, and I was of the opinion it wasn't what your record was, it was how you looked. And, obviously recency bias comes into effect, but Napier's done an excellent job in the last month of November. We all agree that he should have beaten Tennessee. We all agree that had Lagway played, that Florida would have beaten Georgia had he not got hurt, and this team would have been 9-3. And who knows, you'd been on the cusp of
You'd been in the playoff conversation.
Of being in the playoff. You'd be right there with Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama.
Doesn't mean you would have gotten in, but you would have been in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, as awful as the first month started, something changed with Napier. And I don't know if you want to give Napier credit, or if the players wanted the coaches, if the coaches all came to an agreement, whatever it was, it changed. And we were all wrong. I don't have a problem, saying I was wrong. I wanted him fired after the A&M game. I mean, that was an absolute disgrace. What you put up in the swamp. Two out of your first 3 home games, you didn't look like you belonged in the same field with Miami and A&M. And if they played those games now, I'm sure they'd be a lot different. And Florida might, win both or split one. Napier's coming back, and Florida's done a good job. They have a lot of momentum going into the recruiting. I think they said Florida's got 9 commitments in the last 2.5 weeks, and those are just the high school guys. Signing day is next Wednesday. The portal window opens next Monday, right after the bowl games. And then the whole month of December, you're going to have the whole portal window. And I'm excited, man. You have Lagway. Dude, Lagway today, and I'll throw it to you, Graham. There was so many plays he did today. Like, we're so accustomed to him making these plays now, where it's like it's the norm. Had that been a month ago, it would have been like, dude, this guy is unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy how fast that narrative's changed.
Yeah, it is. And he had up and down moments all game. Really good plays, and then plays that were kind of head scratchers at times. The interception, I think I'm probably putting up more on Marcus Burke. You can kind of tell Marcus Burke ran the wrong route almost immediately. There was another almost pick that wasn't a great throw on him. But anyways, yeah, Dylan, I'm glad, early on in this show when we first started, we kind of got some of the criticism out of the way and my thoughts on them needing to hire an OC and all that. But all in all, to your point, when you look at us being a little bit disappointed in this game in terms of wish they would have put up 40 or 50 or stepped on their throats a little bit more or whatever, we have to realize how relative that is, right? Like, we have to realize that's all with the understanding that Florida had 2 monumental program-changing wins the past 2 weeks against ranked teams and a top 10 team in LSU and Ole Miss, right? So it's like, because of how well the last 2 weeks went, we're now a little disappointed with this game against Florida State. Look, man, we got to celebrate this win, man. If Florida went up, and I understand Florida State's terrible. My God, they're terrible. They're one of the worst college football teams I've ever seen. But it doesn't change the fact that Florida went up with a boatload of injuries, went up to Doak Campbell Stadium against their biggest, most hated rival outside of arguably Georgia. People go back and forth on that. And just belt to ass them most of the game. Right? I mean, that game was never – you maybe would have wished Florida had run up the score a little bit more and maybe put up 40. But, the game was never really in doubt. I mean, Dylan, never really one time was I worried that Florida State was really going to make a true comeback.
No.
Exactly. And so, okay, when you put that into context, you got to be pretty happy about that, right? Florida went in with a freshman quarterback on the road to their biggest rival with a laundry list of injuries and dominated the entire game. How upset can you really be, right? It's a great way to cap off what was a kind of shockingly awesome end to a season that you thought was lost. Is that Lagway yeah. Smoking that Knoll pack?
Oh, man. They smoking that cigar.
Smoking that Knoll pack, baby.
Oh, man. Here's I know you didn't see it. Norvell being pissed right when the flag was planted.
What a loser, man. What a loser, bro. Like he's acting like he wants to be all upset like Florida State's not cutting outside out of Ben Hill Griffin when they won and doing all kinds. Come on, man. It's so funny to me, Dylan. Like, so many coaches and media and fans like to get their feelings hurt about stuff like that. Like every rival doesn't do it when they win. Of course they do. We talk about winning with class. Who cares, man? I love the fact that Florida's talking a little mess and getting up in their face and scoring an extra touchdown at the end of the game, and hopefully bringing Solomon Thomas back to Gainesville with him at the end of the game, because he was at the game tonight, by the way, that Florida won convincingly. So I love it, man. I love it, and I hope Billy Napier doesn't apologize. I hope he's like, look, man, we went up to their house, we kicked their ass, and we're not apologizing for it, and they shouldn't. And that's the killer mentality and the killer instinct that Florida needs more of, and to keep going in the future. Yeah, that's the one thing. If Billy Napier can start getting a little bit more of that chip on his shoulder, a little bit more of that, I want to embarrass him, then that's when I'm going to really start to feel good about Billy Napier. He's a great dude. Billy Napier's a great person. He gets his guys to play their ass off for him, and it's now resulting in wins, and he can clearly recruit, as we've seen. Now let's see him turn the page to be a little bit more of a killer. If he can get a lot of coaches are kind of natural born killers a little bit, but if he can sort of just develop that, maybe over some of the history of being a coach here and you know, being a little pissed off that Florida State beat him the last 2 years and kind of letting that live with him and be just a little bit meaner to him, rub their nose in a win a little bit more, then I'm going to start to feel really good about what they got going in 25. And he's doing that on the recruiting trail. I mean, my God, he stripped their whole class to nothing. So,
yeah. God, I'm just going through Twitter, man. Twitter's just so, God bless. I can never get rid of this junk. So after the flag was planted, Norvell grabbed the flag and he tossed it. And Nick De La Torre said, well, that's Florida State's 9th fumble in the game. That was dog.
That's awesome. I love it.
I was trying to be professional and let you talk. God bless. That was so funny. But yeah, man. Good win.
Wait, Dylan, from a macro perspective.
Who did they get in recruiting today? They flipped a tackle from Penn State?
Tavares Dice, tackle from Auburn. Flipped an offensive tackle from Auburn.
Okay.
Dylan, let me get your perspective, because I just went a little bit on it, and I kind of want to get a little more. You know, the talk after Florida State every year always turns into not just the Florida State game specifically, but more into like looking toward the future, looking toward the bowl game they may play, and then sort of a macro perspective, which you've hit on some. Where do you kind of stand now? We've done these shows after every game. You know, you and I have done podcasts all year talking about this team, covering this team. We've watched every snap they've played all year. Just from a 10,000-foot view, you and I both would have fired him earlier in the season, and he's I think I can speak for both of us that he's won us both back over, at least for the here and now. We'll see how next year looks. But what's kind of your feeling right now on the program moving forward? Are you like crazy excited? Are you cautiously optimistic? Where do you kind of stand right now?
I'm pretty optimistic. I feel Florida should have went 9-3. Had you beaten Tennessee in the Lagway, stay in the Georgia game. So I feel like right now, before signing day, before the portal window opens, 9-3 is the bare minimum, which you got to do next year. You got the same schedule next year. You drop UCF, you play USF. And I think you're going to have a lot of guys going to commit to Florida on the sole person, DJ Lagway. I think he's going to be the hottest name in college football all offseason. And I mean, the offseason, I guess, starts next week for all the teams that don't make the playoff, which is obviously most of them. I think Florida is going to be one of the most talked about teams just because of DJ Lagway and what he's been able to do these last couple of games, man. And I wonder, like, where the growth is for him. Like, I'm sure you and many other people would agree. What he did this past month and a half since he got the starting job was just raw talent.
Yeah.
You know, there were a lot of mistakes he made, obviously, but I mean that's with any true freshman. I think that most of the guys come back. Your core guys, you might have a backup running back or here or there, go leave somewhere because of you know money or they want to move closer to home or whatever the case may be. No, the FCS game that was dropped, FAMU was dropped.
Yeah,
the FCS game.
Schedule, not
UCF was dropped for USF, but the program. I mean, I think Florida should be in the playoff picture next year, and I think Florida should be right in that bubble between the number 8 and number 14 team right now. I know that's projecting way ahead, but that's where I see the team next year. That at this point next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to what I wanted to tee up at the end of what you were just saying there. I think the expectation next year is obviously going to ramp up, but what does it tangibly look like? To me, it means, and again, you just said it, Florida from the time the season kicks off in 25 to the end of it, Florida needs to be in the playoff conversation the entire year. Do they make it? Hopefully. But they need to be in a position. I feel like almost for sure, especially if they win the bowl game, almost for sure Florida's going to start the season ranked probably between 15 and 20, if you had to guess, Dylan, something like that.
Yeah. At the minimum.
So assuming that's where you're going to start, you got a big game in Miami. I think Miami's the second game of the year, I want to say. It's early in the season. It's in September. But
yeah,
the entire season, Florida needs to be someone that when you tune in to ESPN or CBS or whoever's talking about the college football playoff, Florida's in the conversation. That's got to be the case the entire year. And the way that happens is between Miami and Georgia and Tennessee and Texas and Florida State at the end of the year and all these other teams that Florida had to play this year, and Texas A&M, like we've talked about, Florida's got to win the lion's share of them. At the end of the year now, the 12-team playoff in the SEC, you can have 2, maybe 3 losses. That's kind of where people are living right now. That's about where Florida needs to be. They need to end the season with 9-10 wins and be in that conversation. And they need to be competitive in every game, but no more blowouts, no more games where you look like you don't belong in the same field, no more busted coverages where dudes are wide open down the field. And
I'll add one more. Billy Napier cannot start the year like he did against Miami and 2 years ago in Utah and have 10 points.
Correct.
And have a point where you don't even look like you know what you're doing offensively, man. Like that jump's got to go. That's got to go.
I agree. So yeah, that based on how they ended the season and based on the mojo they have and based on the recruiting and based on what I think all of us expect to be a really, really, really active portal cycle for the Gators coming up. Totally agree. You got to finish the year next year with 9-10 wins. You got to be in the playoff conversation. And in year 4, that's a really reasonable and really fair expectation in a 12-team playoff. Like 100%. Right? So from a macro perspective, because that's the expectation now and because I don't think it's ridiculous anymore to keep Billy Napier as the coach, whereas it did seem ridiculous a couple months ago, you got to be happy with the season overall, which is crazy to say. I never would have thought I would have said that at the beginning of the season after A&M and Miami, but for them to make this, to kind of complete this turnaround, they didn't totally complete it. Obviously, it's not like they're, playoff team right now, but for them to make this turnaround to where you've won back the vast majority of the fan base, you've won back the vast majority of probably the boosters and the people that are going to be influential in helping you get some of these guys and more of the recruits and all that. There's really only reason now to go into this offseason with nothing but optimism, right? So I think I get to look back at the 2024 season and say, good year. Not amazing year, not fantastic year, not something awesome, but good year. Eugene says you guys in favor of replacing both lines of scrimmage. Replace is a strong word. Replace would mean you're just cleaning total house. I mean, the lines of scrimmage have been decent all year, and Caleb Banks will probably end up going to the draft if I had to guess. And I think Jake Slaughter will probably end up in the draft, and Crenshaw Dixon, I believe, is a senior. So a couple of guys are not going to be back, but replace and supplement, I think, are two different things. I would supplement the line, both lines of scrimmage, absolutely. In terms of defensive line depth, I would definitely say at D tackle, they need 2 or 3 bodies in the portal, Dylan, I think. And then on the offensive line, I think you need a couple of guys, especially dudes that have played a lot of football and have some experience under your belt. I think you're almost for sure going to need a right tackle. Damian George, we'll see. He may go to the draft, may not. We'll kind of see with him. Who knows? So you're going to have to replace some guys, and you're not going to do it with all people that are currently on the roster. Probably some. You got Fletcher Westfall and a couple other guys on the offensive line you can feel excited about moving forward. Roger Kearney's been developing for 2 years. So, again, no, to answer your question, I wouldn't replace the offensive line and defensive line through the portal, but I would supplement. I would hope by the end of the portal cycle you got 4 to 5 bodies between both defensive lines on both sides.
Yeah, I said it, last week or so. Lane Kiffin said multiple times when they lost to Georgia last year, they built their team to beat Georgia, and the way they did that was they got Princely Manillan from Florida. They got another dude in the defensive line. They got another guy in the offensive line. They got starters from other teams that were doing really well, and they paid them to come to their team. And that's what Florida's going to do. I mean, all this buyout money that was supposed to be going to Napier that allegedly is going to go to the players, we'll know the next month because December 28th, the portal window opens. We'll know what the recruiting class looks like from early signing day, which is when most guys sign. And you got to get better lines of scrimmage. Because, I mean, what changed from November, from September, and the middle of October? The lines of scrimmage. Florida was able to run the football.
Yeah.
Florida was able to get pressure of the opposing quarterbacks when they played LSU, when they played Florida State tonight. I know they're not a good team. When they played Ole Miss last week. You've got to win the lines of scrimmage, and you've got to be able to be dominant. It's hard to have depth in this era, man, because some of the guys can leave.
It is.
Because you can play somewhere else and you can get money and you can get playing time. That's where it gets really hard. I know this is the best, but when Georgia had those dominant lines of scrimmage and they can go too deep, and guys like Trayvon Walker could play 40% of the snaps. Those days are gone. You're not going to get those games back. But
there's a big gap between your starters on the D line and your backups than there's ever been before, probably in college football for the top guys.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where I spend all my money and attention. Jamie French maybe. I would be shocked if he.
Dallas Wilson.
I'll be shocked if he decommits from Texas. But you got to get some kind of big time receiver, and I'm sure. I mean, DJ Lagway he sells himself, man. I mean, if you see him play, and if you're a deep shot receiver like an Isaiah Bond at Texas, not saying that he's going to come to Florida, but a guy like him, and you're at a school where you're not happy, and you're at a Big Ten school or whatever, like Elijah Badger was, I don't know how you don't want to come play at Florida, especially with everything that's rolling right now.
I totally agree, and you factor in the fact that it seems like Florida's got the finances ready when they're going to bow up like they need to, which is important because they obviously they need to build this roster. They got a good roster. They got a lot of good young guys on both sides of the ball to feel really excited about. They need to supplement that with experience, and they need to let these guys that have gotten really, really, really valuable playing time, especially the back half of this season, really develop into absolute stars. I think next year you're going to look at obviously Lagway, obviously Jaden Ball. On the defense, you look at guys like Dijon Johnson, Jordan Castell is going to be back. Guys like Bryce Thornton that have really emerged. LJ McCray got a lot of snaps tonight, and obviously you look for him to get even more moving forward. I know I'm missing a few. Those are the types of dudes that you need to look at to be your stars on this team and your difference makers, and the guys that when we're doing post-game shows next year, we spend a lot of time talking about. And in the portal, you need to supplement it with dudes that have just played a lot of college football that can bring some veteran experience to the entire locker room and to certain position groups. Like, I think this year, Elijah Badger was probably the most productive receiver they had all year. But I think of in terms of just play a lot of college football, I think of like a Chim DK, right, Dylan? Like how many times this year does Florida need a play on 3rd and 4, and Chim DK went and got you 7? So a guy like that I know he had a drop tonight, but for the most part, typically doesn't drop the ball. Really sure-handed in punt return. Without him, Florida's not competitive in that Tennessee game toward the end. He was killing them on punt returns. Had the big catch from Lagway into the end, and dudes like that. James says Aaron Gates. Yeah, 100% Aaron Gates. He got hurt last week, obviously, but Aaron Gates needs to be one of your stars next year. He was unreal when he was playing. The linebackers, Pup Howard, Shamar James, Jack Pyburn. You got a lot of guys really excited about you. You got to supplement it with dudes that are going to help bring you some leadership to the team, along with Lagway being obviously a natural leader, and then you can have a team that you really feel like can go beat anybody.
Let's dip into fantasy land before you roll out of here. I know most teams, they have injuries, and it felt like Florida had a lot of them. If Mertz never gets hurt, if Montreal Johnson never gets hurt, and let's just say half the DBs don't get hurt, how different do you think this team is right now?
I was thinking about this a little bit during the game, knowing that we'd probably get into this a little bit. Offensively, with the exception of a few guys, like Damian George would have helped them tonight, I think, in the running game if he had played. He was out today. But the bigger injuries, like you're talking about, like Montrell earlier in the season, Graham Mertz, when he was done for the season against Tennessee, the injuries on offense objectively helped them, I think. And you and I talked about this a little bit after the Ole Miss game during our show. It's pretty much impossible to argue that allowing Florida to discover how good Jaden Ball was and letting Lagway get this type of experience and build the momentum for next year, it's impossible to argue that wasn't really advantageous. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, it's objectively a good thing now that the season's over that you got Dijon Johnson a bunch of reps, that you got Jack Pyburn a lot more involved, that you got Aaron Gates before he got hurt really involved, that you got Thornton more involved, Sharif Denson, some of these young guys. Now, looking towards next year, it's obviously good they played. But, if Jason Marshall doesn't get hurt, that would have helped the defense. I mean, that's impossible to, disagree with. So, it kind of a hit or miss on defense, sort of depending on the position. I think offensively, though, it's impossible to say that it's not objectively a good thing moving forward that some of these guys got hurt and allowed the younger guys to shine and show how good they really are.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm of the belief if Mertz never got hurt, Lagway would have never started. And, I mean, who knows where we'd be at. I don't think we would have – so what, we lost to Georgia, Texas, won our last three. I think we would have beaten Florida State, obviously, and we might have won one of those LSU Ole Miss games.
I don't think they beat either one.
Yeah, and I was just being optimistic. Like, your DJ Lagway's playbook, what he can do – on script and off script it's unlimited. And with Mertz, it was you're playing in a phone booth and it's okay. Hopefully, maybe somebody doesn't do their job on the defensive side to create a big play.
And you have to be perfect every drive because any given play, Florida picks up, but Florida stays ahead of the chains and moves the ball with Mertz. But like the problem when you play football like that, and when you expect to just get 5 to 6 yards a carry or a throw and move the ball like that, the problem with that is once you get one false start, the drive's over. Once you get one holding call, the drive's over. One incomplete pass, the drive's over. And with Lagway, you feel like even when it is 3rd and 9, you have a chance. Even when it is 3rd and 11, you have a chance. If it's 2nd and 4, you feel like there's a world where you might chuck it deep and get 50 yards and get in the end zone. And who knows what bad things could have happened on that drive. So Lagway's explosion, I think, proved that there's a world where a Billy Napier run Florida team can be really explosive and can beat anybody versus Mertz. It's like, we'll beat the teams we should, maybe not, and we won't beat anybody that we shouldn't.
Is there anybody that you want to play the bowl game?
Like anyone specifically?
Yeah, like just any team. I've seen everything that I've seen. We're playing in South Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. I'm like, that's that'll do nothing for me.
I'd rather play in the Gator Bowl. Obviously, I'm biased because it's in Jacksonville, but it's more so I'd rather play an ACC team.
Okay.
I'd rather play a Syracuse or someone like that. I don't want to play Georgia Tech. Those boys are good, man. Those boys can control the line of scrimmage, and they got as much momentum as anybody, including us.
Yeah, but I mean, if you lose, what's that mean?
Not a ton, but I'd rather win just to be able to kind of cap off a good season. It's not catastrophic if they lose, but it'd be nice.
No, it's not. But one team I like to play is Kansas. Did they have it? Dang, Kansas, as well as they did the last month, they finished 5-7. I saw some people that Florida might play them. Yeah, Florida. I mean, the way that I don't know where they finished in the SEC because it's all based on where you finish in the conference and then how that bowl game matches up with the other conference that you're going to play, whether it be the Big Ten or the ACC or whoever. I mean, let's be honest. There's not many hot ACC Big Ten teams with 7-8 wins or 6 wins. I guess Michigan because they finished 6-6. But that'd be a boring game, man. I mean, Michigan's going to go 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, and they're going to run it here and they're going to run it there. But I mean, the last month of the season, what the bowl game would have usually done, and let's see how your young guys play, and all the old guys are going to be going to the draft or whatever, going to transfer. I mean, we've kind of seen from the last month of the season, so it's not like there's a lot of angst to, a lot of unknown for the bowl game.
Yeah, there won't be a whole lot of opt-outs, maybe a few, but it's not like in years past where it was a skeleton crew out there.
Oh, nah, they're too good. I was going to say Colorado. Colorado's got too many wins to play Florida.
Yeah, Brian was talking about playing Miami. They got too many wins as well.
Yeah. So, all right. We topped off with 929 people in the chat, baby. And Ryan, I'll say that we start dropping people.
Last thing before we sign off again, we say it every week, but with the last regular season show, it's worth saying again. Like everybody that listens, everybody that tunes in, Dylan and I know I speak for both of us. Like we cannot express how much we appreciate you guys tuning into the show, engaging with us after every game, celebrating, mourning when they lose. Everything good, bad, everything in between. Like we love talking Gator football. We love hanging out with you guys. We're going to continue to bring you shows. We're not done here, but post game shows. Obviously, we won't do one until the bowl game because there ain't going to be a football game. But again, like everybody listening, like we can't express how much we appreciate you guys. We've had so much fun doing this show, and it's allowed us to grow a lot and continue to talk about Gator football and really enjoy it. So, shout out everybody listening and engaging and everything.
Yes, and we'll I assume for the month of December, we'll probably give you 2 shows a week, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday. Well, we'll know the bowl game not tomorrow, but the following Sunday. Talk about that. And anytime, we'll give you a show after the early signing, which is next Wednesday. But, just continue to subscribe to the 1010XL Gator channels on Facebook, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get us. I'm more of the YouTube guy. I don't know why. I like to see people. I know Graham's more of the audio person, but however you get us, we're everywhere. And obviously you can get us on the podcast at any time. But yeah, anytime anything's popping, we'll talk about it. And Graham will tell you about Gator basketball.
Signing next week though. Signing day next Wednesday.
Yes.
4th. We'll definitely talk signing day and recruits and hopefully a couple 5-stars to talk about.
Dude, did Wichita State just not show up for 15 minutes yesterday?
I think this Gator basketball team is really, really good, man.
That's it. I was expecting you to go on a 7-minute tangent. That was
we'll have a lot of time to talk Gator basketball. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Dylan Denmark. That's Graham Marsh. We hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Enjoy your weekend. The Noles can suck it. The final score was 31-11, I believe it was. And finished season 7-5, man. It's a good season with the schedule that Florida had. So,
yes, sir.
A lot of momentum moving forward. And let's keep it rolling, man. Sunbelt Billy. Keep the train rolling.